All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Everything College Bowl podcast. Today, me and Nick are previewing prediction for the Sugar Bowl between Georgia and Notre Dame after they just defeated Indiana in South Bend in the first round matchup. Books are opening at -1.5 in favor of the Irish. Some books have the total at 44 and 46.5. We'll go in the middle with 45, 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time, New Year's Day on ESPN from Caesars Superdome in New Orleans. Starting things off with this Notre Dame offense that we just saw, Nick. There was an interesting part of this game for Notre Dame, I thought, in the third quarter, where the offense just wasn't really doing too much in terms of running the ball. The physical dominance, I thought, for the most part, it looked good. They did get a little stale, though, that one part, but they were winning early on in the game in the interior. They started to whiff on some blocks, though. I mean, this is a great run defense, top-ranked one in the country, maybe a little bit skewed for Indiana, but, I think throughout the year they've proven they're a legitimate run defense. This was an offense that still ran the ball. Another 200-plus yard rushing game. They were able to keep Riley Leonard's legs fresh. He only had a handful of carries, undesigned runs, that is, and then Jeremiah Love ripped off a 98-yarder to really open up the scoring party. That was the first touchdown of the game. Ended up with 108 yards and only 8 carries. That's phenomenal, Nick. They were able to keep him nice and fresh, and I think that's why he's seen some of the effectiveness from the run game not be as great. And here against Georgia, it's going to be full steam ahead. You're going to see a lot of designed QB runs, a lot more of Love. And Jadarian Price didn't really have a great day, 32 yards on 11 carries. But some of those things, Nick, are going to be more true against Georgia, and I think that'll lead to some more effectiveness. But they've proven they can be nice and physical, but I think the offensive line's inconsistencies at times in the second half kind of worried me a little bit, but I don't think they're too major. What are your thoughts?
I think this offense played well against Indiana, but I do agree with you. There are some concerns. Overall, this is an offense that's really effective on the ground, and in general, they were really effective in this game against Indiana. 394 total yards of offense for them. Riley Leonard was decent enough as a passer, 201, 6.3, and one score when one interception for him, 23 of 32, while Love was really good on the ground, but they didn't use him a whole lot. Price got a good amount of carries. Leonard got comfortable on the ground throughout the game. I think this is an offense that's really solid on the ground. They're obviously, a good ground attack that's going up against a Georgia rushing defense that's had some issues at times this season. I like what I've been able to see on Notre Dame. They were control the clock, control the tempo in this game, which I think was a big deal for them. They had 35 minutes of possession of the ball, a lot, more than Indiana did, who had 25 minutes of the ball. So they were able to possess the ball. They got 20 first downs, and they were efficient on offense. I like what I've seen. Sure, a bit shaky in that third quarter, but in general, I feel good about what this Notre Dame offense is able to do. This is a really solid unit that had a really productive game and first game of the playoffs.
Looks like the final numbers got revised to under 200 yards, but, whatever. 200 plus for Riley Leonard passing. He was pretty efficient as well. This isn't too fancy of a passing attack. They like to keep things smooth and simple, underneath throws, hitches, curls, stuff that just kind of, get near the sticks or slightly past the six. I thought Leonard made some nice plays with his legs on the move as well. That's something he's proven to be good at. He also had a great throw at the end of the game for that final touchdown where he stepped up in the pocket, felt the pressure, made an NFL-like throw. So this is a quarterback with a lot of experience against this Georgia defense. It's not going to be as smooth sailing, though. He's going to take a lot of hits, most likely. He's going to have to play with some toughness, some grit. He's going to have to make tight window throws. It's going to be a tough scheme that Georgia comes to the table with. Kirby Smart and his staff, they're certainly going to have one in favor. So it's going to be a fun chess match. Mike Denbrock's a great offensive play caller. Running straight downhill, something that's been a vulnerability for Georgia, and that's where the Irish thrive. And, screens are a big part of this offense as well. You've seen a couple of nice ones for the Irish against Indiana. Overall, this is an offense of tremendous balance, Nick, and has not faded once this year, and that continues to be true. And it happened here again, where they had, pretty much 400-plus yards against Indiana. Like you said, they hogged time of possession. I think that Leonard has a nice, deep receiving group. You've really seen Jordan Faison be the focus for the Irish in the first round, but they also have Bo Collins, who's the leading pass catcher, Jaden Greathouse, Mitchell Evans is a great tight end, Jaden Harrison, and then Chris Mitchell is a pretty talented player as well. Him and Jaden Thomas don't have as much production, but this is a very deep receiving core, Nick. A lot of versatility here. What do you think they're going to be in store against the Bulldogs here, where schematically it's going to be a tough challenge for them?
I do like what this Notre Dame passing attack can do. I think Riley Leonard's a really good passer. That's getting better as the season goes on. These stats are prior to the playoff game. These are regular season stats only. But he has 60% comp rate, 2,100 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, and 5 picks. Looking better as season goes on. Bo Collins has been his top receiver, about 430 yards receiving and 2 scores. Mitchell Evans has 3 touchdowns in the red zone. He's a really good red zone tight end. Greathouse has been solid for this team as well. They've been able to get a few different guys involved. Faison got 7 grabs for 89 yards in the game against Indiana. He was the top target. while Jaden Thomas was a target in the red zone. He had a receiving touchdown this game, and that's his second on the season. Really good numbers there. They also targeted Evans, a tight end in the red zone. Bo Collins had 2 grabs for about 20 yards. So not a high volume passing attack, but a very effective passing attack that has been able to balance out this rushing attack that they have that's been very dominant on the ground this season. I thought I saw Faison step up tonight in that game, which is really good for them. I think I've seen some other players step up as well, and I have no worries for this passing attack. I think they have great balance. They'll be able to do what they got to do in this matchup against Georgia. They're rushing for about 225 yards per game, which is a really impressive number, while also passing for about 200 yards per game. Really good balance there. Really good numbers from this offense.
Now you look at the offensive line. Anthony Knapp, that true freshman left tackle. I thought he was pretty good in the first round as a run blocker. Throughout the year, he's been really iffy as a pass blocker. I mean, he wasn't supposed to be playing at all this year, so I think he's taken some large strides. Sam Pendleton at left guard. Him and Billy Schraith might be the starters. Depends on what happens with Rocco Spindler, who exited with an injury, didn't play in the second half, so we'll have to monitor his availability. Got about 10 days to get healthy here. Pat Coogan's a phenomenal center in the middle, and that right tackle, Emil Wagner. He's been pretty good in all regards. He's really not much of a vulnerability at all. This is going to be a tough challenge. This is a young tackle, Nick Knapp. They're going to try and confuse him. Georgia, one thing they like to do is they like to send random nickel blitzes. They also like to randomly win one-on-one edge rushes. That's how Georgia's defensive line is. They might be quiet at times, but those are the things they can do, and their pass rush can be ferocious. This is a very physical offensive line. This will be a very interesting test. For the most part, I thought they did good in pass protection. Again, in the second half, things got a little bit shaky. And, of course, that's when Spindler went down. But these guys are going to have to be more consistent, Nick. This is all an offensive line, though. It's proven its worth. They've played an SEC D-line all the way back in the season opener. They've been good against some tough physical D-lines. And this is the number 1 ranked run D against statistically in Indiana they just faced. So I think they're going to be up for the challenge. I don't think they're absolutely going to get stifled by any means, but it's not going to be an easy contest.
It certainly won't be an easy contest anytime you battle a team that's strong in the trenches like Georgia is. I think when I look at this offensive line for Notre Dame, I think it's a very strong unit that had a good game here. Those nickel blitzes that Georgia sends obviously going to throw you off guard. Certainly they have to kind of scheme and prepare for that. I think Marcus Freeman will work on getting his guys ready. Anthony Knapp really hasn't faced in like that at left tackle in his career. The true freshman has been playing really good football, but still is a very young player playing against a veteran defensive line that could potentially be a mismatch opportunity on the left side. Pat Coogan's been really good at center. I continue to expect him to lead this team. So far this season, he's been phenomenal. This is a good offensive line that had a good game against Indiana, and I'm expecting them to have a good game against Georgia as well.
Now we'll move to this Bulldog offense. Of course, the biggest headline, I'm sure you know by now, Carson Beck's not going to be playing in this one. Gunnar Stockton, he has a few weeks to prepare now, was forced into action in that second half against Texas. Made some good throws, a couple on third down as well. For the most part, though, they didn't seem to trust this guy, Nick. I don't think they threw the ball once they got to the red zone. Late in the game, 3rd and long, they decided to throw it. He throws a horrendous interception. Or if, the DB for Texas would have blocked, it probably would have costed them the game and maybe even a shot in the playoffs, Nick. Obviously, we both talked about this, already, and we didn't feel that Stockton being the starter would write Georgia off by any means. I don't think that this means that he's going to lose them the game at all, and I think Georgia still has a great shot of still winning the national championship if they have to ride with this guy throughout the CFP. A couple weeks to prepare now. That's certainly going to be a lot better than what he was forced into just a couple weeks ago. You can't make panic mistakes like that, though, Nick, but they can't put him in that type of situation. So I think that the coaching staff and him, they're going to be on a much better page here. Of course, we'll get to the run game. They were dominant in that second half against Texas. A big reason why they were able to win that game is because the run game really took over. What kind of trust do you think this coaching staff has in him, Nick? Because they didn't show it in the red zone, but in 3rd and long with a lead, they trusted him, and it didn't pay off at all. So Mike Bobo and the staff, they have to be on a better page, and I certainly think that they will be.
I've seen a lot of paranoia on social media regarding Georgia and Carson Beck not playing, people writing off this Bulldogs team because Stockton's at the helm. I think got to pump the brakes here. I feel pretty good about Gunnar Stockton being the quarterback of this team. This is a guy that's been in the program for a while, knows the playbook, has been sitting on the bench learning and gathering information. I don't think you need to panic right now if you're a Georgia fan. I think Stockton is more than capable of leading this offense. Yes, that pick in the game against Texas was a bad one, sure, but we saw him, be able to take a hit. He looked confident in that. He was able to run a little bit in the later stages of that game in overtime. He's a quarterback that's solid, really good in the pocket, physical, nice arm strength, good footwork, and a decent runner at times as well. I'm not panicking about Georgia fan. I think Gunnar Stockton can certainly lead this team to victory against Notre Dame and can certainly lead this team further in the playoffs. I don't think you need to panic at all. You have a couple weeks to sort of build up this scheme, like you said there, and they can run the ball. Certainly it's an effective rushing attack with some talented pieces. Not have the best season, but we saw them succeed on the ground against Texas. I like what they could do with the play calling. I think the offensive unit there is really solid in terms of coordinators. Then they can scheme up something for Stockton, really play a conservative game plan that's not conservative enough that will cost you. Have the right balance of hitting big plays when you need to and putting Stockton into more risky throws when you need to. I'm not concerned about it. I think Stockton's a phenomenal player, and I think he's going to be up for the task. I think he'll play just fine in this game.
And of course, he's going to need his weapons to step up, though, because this still is a guy with no starts to his name. And even though we do have some good confidence in him, this is a talented guy that's really lit things up in practice over the last couple of years. These receivers have not been great for Georgia. Arian Smith, the big-time speedster, 750 yards and 4 scores. He's going to be your top outside receiver. Dominic Lovett, he's a slot warrior, 6 scores, 571 there. And then Dylan Bell, the Swiss Army knife, third on the team in receiving. These three guys have a combined 20 drops, Nick. That's not good. And if they're not helping out Carson Beck, how are they going to help out a guy who's going to probably have some nerves to him, isn't going to make the best plays from time to time? They're going to have to go out there and they're going to have to make some tough catches throughout the game. How confident are you in these pass catchers opposed to the quarterback? Because, we talked about, you just talked about him and his abilities, but these receivers are going to have to step up, and there's going to be more of a focal point for them to help out this young quarterback.
I certainly have to see a big game out of these receivers. These guys have not been good enough this year. A lot of drops, a really shaky unit that has to be good. You have to help out your young quarterback. Don't put him into situations where he makes a good throw, but you drop it. That's going to just kill his confidence. You cannot drop the ball a lot in this game. You have to be smart. These receivers have to be good with their hands. Arian Smith, Dominic Lovett, Dylan Bell none of them have really played up to the expectations so far this season. Smith with 750 yards receiving and 4 scores for him. Lawson Lucky's been a promising player over the past couple of weeks. 350 for him and 3 scores. But we need to see a lot out of this. Oscar Delp, too, a guy that's really come alive in the red zone as late with 4 touchdowns. We need to see this unit be strong. They have to be confident, have to catch passes, cannot make any mistakes. You need to help your quarterback out. Make a big play if you can. Really give this guy some confidence, because if you start dropping balls, it's just going to put the quarterback's head in a tough spot and really can make things go sideways very quickly for this Georgia pass-catching unit.
Yeah, you alluded to 2 good tight ends, Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky. Now we'll focus on the run game. They're going to have to be the biggest part of this contest against a great run defense. Only 141 rushing against Texas. But in the second half, they really took over, and they were able to establish some nice rhythm on the ground. Getting Trevor Etienne back was phenomenal for this rushing attack. After missing 3 games, he had 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. Phenomenal effort from him. One of his best efforts of the year. Nate Frazier is the team's leading rusher. He's been fully healthy all year, 634 and 8 touchdowns. So all of a sudden, they got a nice 1-2 punch here. These guys are going to be a big focal point for this offense. A lot of efficiency from Frazier, especially in the back half of the season. So it seems like we have some confidence here in this rushing attack, but never once this year have they been physically dominant. Best game they have is 200 yards against UMass. That's the only time this year they've cleared 200 rushing. This is just not a physically dominant rushing attack, no matter what people like to think in terms of what they've done over the last couple of years. This year's story is different, Nick. We've seen this team play 13 games now, and they just have not really established that. The offensive line's a big reason. Left tackle, I think Monroe Freeling is going to be the guy they continue to roll with. I think Ernest Green's too much of a liability, but he'll be there if they need him. Left guard, Dylan Fairchild, he's been great. Center, Jared Wilson, he's been an elite player for them. And at right guard, looks like Tate Ratledge should be a full go. So that's great. This interior is going to be back to full strength. Xavier Truss, a right tackle, though, hasn't been that good. And I said it coming into the year, Nick, it's proven to be true. These tackles are just not the greatest. I know this isn't the best edge rushing group for Notre Dame, but they're going to try and screen up some opportunities to try and defeat these guys in terms of run blocking. They're probably not going to provide much either. Can't just focus on the interior. What do you think this O-line and rushing attack will be able to accomplish?
This rushing attack has not been the same, Georgia, and that's been a real reason why this team has struggled at points in the season. 130 yards per game and 1.8 touchdowns per game, 4.2 yards per carry. It's just not good enough. They're not been able to run the ball effectively, and that's really been damaging their offense. They're also only attempting about 30 carries per game, which is certainly less than you would expect. Been just a by-committee approach, like typical of Georgia, but Trevor Etienne was plugged in. It really hasn't worked out with him. Nate Frazier hasn't really worked out with him either. He's been okay at times, but you expected more out of him. 8 touchdowns, 634 for him. You really would expect more. Branson Robinson's got touches here and there, a couple different pieces. Beck's got a few carries. In general, you expected more of this rushing attack. And same thing, the offensive line's been battling some injuries, but I'm not super confident in Ratledge and Truss. They've not been playing great this season. While Monroe Freeling's held up well as a sophomore, but still has some holes in his game. I worry a little bit here. This Notre Dame pass rush is a really good unit that has a solid day against Indiana. Can they win that battle in the trenches? I think it's certainly possible.
Yeah, the offensive line took a big nosedive when Ratledge departed due to injury. Now he's back, so I certainly think that's a phenomenal boost if he's indeed at 100%, which it appears he is. Moving to the Notre Dame defense, this is a group that's proven to be elite this year. Certainly they haven't played the toughest of strength of schedule, but for the most part they've been great. They played Georgia Tech, a nice rushing attack, held them to only 64 yards rushing. Louisville had almost 400 yards, but for the most part played a pretty good game. They were playing from behind. They were on the field a lot in that one. I think it's Texas A&M in the season opener. Really manhandled that offensive line. USC was able to put up a lot of yards, but that's a Lincoln Riley offense. So for the most part, Nick, this has been a great defense. Completely stifled Indiana. I know Rourke was able to put up some numbers late in that game. The game was already over, and they were able to score in 2 straight possessions. They put him up to 215 passing, but there was no separation at all for these receivers throughout the game. Held them completely in check. This passing attack also surrounding a lot of pressure to Notre Dame. And we kind of figured that's what Indiana would happen to them, because the same thing happened against Ohio State. For them to continue to play this much confidence and this much effort in man coverage is impressive, Nick. And against these receivers, it's going to be a much tougher challenge. But it's going to be a competitive matchup. I think the Irish, with these young corners, Leonard Moore, Christian Gray, they've proven that they can certainly handle these challenges. They have a veteran player in the slot in Jordan Clark, who's great. And, of course, they have 2 veteran safeties, Aiden Schuler and then Xavier Watts, who's one of the best defenders in all of America. What are your thoughts about this secondary and how they've played this year and what they might accomplish here against Georgia?
I really like what the secondary can do. You talked about Xavier Watts there, an All-American award winner who's been really good for this team. Prior to tonight's stats, he had 49 total tackles, 5 picks, and 9 pass breakups. Great numbers there. He added an additional 10 tackles against this Indiana team, plus a half tackle for loss. So he's all over the field, just a really good veteran player that's been phenomenal for this team. Jordan Clark also had 5 tackles and a tackle for loss against Indiana, so he's been playing really good football this season. He has 25 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and an interception prior to the Indiana game. I like what the secondary do. Rod Hurd's another good piece. The secondary, Leonard Moore, has been really good at corner for this team. Andon Schuler's been solid with 3 picks as well for this team, 3 pass breakups. Moore has 8 pass breakups, and then Christian Gray also has 8 pass breakups and 2 picks. A really good unit in man coverage and defense that has been really good against a lot of talented offenses as of late. I like what this defense can do, and it's led by the secondary. That's a phenomenal unit.
And, of course, they were great in tackling against Indiana. I mean, their run game was not able to generate much. They had like a few outside zone runs. That was about it. They held them in check in that regard as well. 63 yards rushing on 27 attempts, so the run defense came to play as well. And the secondary is a big reason for that. Again, playing man coverage, you can be more vulnerable to getting beat, especially on outside runs like that. I think that's a big target area for Georgia, and these guys got to be positioned correctly. So that's something I might be a little bit worried about, getting out-schemed in that regard. You look at the front 7 for Notre Dame, though, this defensive line, a lot of veterans. Riley Mills, you want to check his availability. I know he got injured in the second half of that game. Looks like he's going to be all right. He's a great interior pass rusher, as is Howard Cross, who is still working his way back to 100%, played a good game against IU. It should get a full run of go in terms of reps here. This team's also battled some injuries up here. R.J. Oben's been a little bit quiet as an edge rusher, but he's been a respectable pass rusher. Bryce Young had a phenomenal speed rush at one point on 3rd down. Was able to come away with a sack there. This is a pass rush that really started to light up this offensive line. And again, we've talked about the liabilities for Georgia, but they're going to have to play another great game, Nick. It's going to come down to stunts and twists, much like they did against IU. It's not going to be, the same as it was against the Hoosiers. We're able to just consistently win one-on-one, Nick. It's going to take another strong collective group. I think this D-line, they're built for this, though. This is a veteran group. That interior I just alluded to. I think they're ready to take on this challenge. It's going to be a very tough one, though.
This is a tough defensive line. Riley Mills was playing a really good game against Indiana, getting held on a couple of occasions there where they just had to hold him because he was going to break through and get a sack before being banged up a little bit. He should be good to go, though. He's having a great season prior to the Indiana game. 35 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks for him. Good numbers there. I like what I've seen out of him. Some other pieces are, R.J. Oben, Howard Cross have been really good for this team. Each of them having decent seasons. I think, Cross is a really physical player. Bryce Young's a really good player for this team as well. He's solid. I think this is a good unit, right? Donovan Heinisch has been really solid as well. He's been physical, getting in there, 4 sacks and 4 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks for him. Good numbers. I like what this unit can do. I think they're going to be solid against the run and solid against the pass, attacking a weak offensive line.
You look at the middle of this defense. It's been a great linebacking core despite all the youth around the veteran Jack Kaiser, who has been a phenomenal player this year, especially in coverage. You look at a player in Drake Bowen, who at one point in the second half on a play, it was a screen pass. He read it beautifully, was able to snag a tackle for loss there. These guys are just so well coached. Jays Nosberry also had a couple of tackles for loss. Those are going to be your 3 backers. These guys are fresh. These guys, before the IU game had all played under 500 snaps, so they've not been taking too many brutalized hits. This is going to be a physical game, so they should be good in that regard. But, man, this is such a well-coached linebacking group, Nick. I think Osbury is a little bit of a liability in coverage, so might not play as much in this game. But Kaiser and Bowen, these guys have been tremendous this year, incredibly efficient tacklers. Can't wait to see how they do against an SEC caliber opponent.
All three linebackers are the team's top tacklers so far this season. Kaiser with 64 total tackles prior to tonight. He added an additional 5 tonight, 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack for him. Bowen, 54 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, while Ashbury has 50 total tackles and 5 tackles for loss. Yes, I agree he's a bit of a weak asset in coverage, but in general, I think he's a good tackler that's really good against the run. All three of them are very polished against the run, and I expect them to have success against the run in this matchup as well. This could go a long way. This is a good, confident middle of the defense that matches up pretty well here.
Now you move to the Georgia defense. Hasn't been your typical Bulldogs defense this year. Outside of the Texas games, they've really feasted against the Horns. That's an offense that really hasn't had much of a ceiling all year, though. But they still dominated. They held them to 29 and 31 rushing yards, respectively. That's a great offensive line that they faced. Gave up 350-plus passing to Ewers, though, in the SEC title game. For the most part this year, Nick, we'll start with the run defense. They've just not been good. You've seen it against Alabama. They couldn't defend the QB run. Week before that, against Kentucky, they were getting burned by downhill running. The misdirection from Georgia Tech schooled them. 260 rushing in that one. Dylan Sampson had a 100-yard day against Tennessee. Ole Miss, they were able to have some success on only 133 yards, but they're still running right downhill, picking up first downs, Nick. This Georgia run defense has just not been that good. It's the worst one I've seen in recent memory under Kirby Smart. They're still loaded up front. Great duo in Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson. Christian Miller's been a nice run defender for them. Chas Chambliss has surprisingly been an elite playmaker. Michael Williams, he's been good against the run. Really inconsistent as a pass rusher, though, but he has the ability to make big-time plays. And then Tyron Ingram-Dawkins, he's been pretty productive this year, although he misses a lot of tackles, 10 of them to be exact. So that's not great. A lot of whiff rate on him. This is a D-line that's capable of a lot more, Nick. Just we have not seen the physical dominance in the trenches, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Both of these teams played Georgia Tech, and I know Haynes King didn't play in the matchup against Notre Dame. It's still the same style of offense, Nick, and Georgia did not pass the test. I guess they won the game in like 27 overtimes. But they got absolutely annihilated, and so far this year, downhill running's been a big problem for them.
Georgia struggled against the run against Georgia Tech. They've struggled against the run a lot this year. The numbers are skewed. They're only giving up 127 yards per game and 1.1 touchdowns, but that's skewed. They played some bad opponents this year. They're unable to run the ball against them. Their key opponents they played, like Georgia Tech, they struggled against the run in that matchup, and that could certainly be a warning flag if you are a Bulldogs fan, considering this is a hell of a rushing attack that Notre Dame has. Chas Chambliss has been really fun to watch for this team. 37 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks for him. He's been really good. Nazir Stackhouse, Warren Brinson, you know what you're going to get out of them, as well as Christian Miller. All solid numbers for them. They each got 20-plus tackles. Brinson has 6 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Miller, 4 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Michael Williams has been really good for this team. 9 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. While Tyron Ingram-Dawkins has 8 total tackles for loss and 3 sacks. Good numbers there, but this has been a unit that's not playing up to the level of Georgia. Obviously, that was a high bar they've set in the past, but it's just a bit disappointing, right? They're just not as physically strong, and they're not clogging the run lanes as they have in the past. And it could be a problem when you play a Notre Dame offense that is so good at running the ball and has a lot of options with Leonard and the couple backs they have in the backfield. It could be a red flag and could really be a long day for Georgia if this Notre Dame Fighting Irish offense is firing on full cylinders.
I definitely think it's possible this linebacking group just overwhelms the Notre Dame offensive line. C.J. Allen's been an elite run defender, a great tackler. He's abysmal in coverage, though, and I think the Irish are a little underrated when it comes to dumping it off to their back, so that's certainly something to monitor. Getting Smail Munden back is a nice addition for them. He hasn't been all that great, though, in the last 2 games, playing a lot of snaps, but he's a veteran that understands this defense as good as anybody. Raylan Wilson, he'll get on the field occasionally. Kind of looks like his spot's been taken over, though. And then Jalen Walker, the Butkus Award winner. We were a fan of this guy coming into the year. We thought he was probably the most talented linebacker in the country due to his abilities, as a spy and his ability to come off the edge as well as a pass rusher. I mean, he's flawless in all regards, it seems. Riley Leonard's not exactly a guy you QB spy, but he's going to have opportunities to try and take off, and Jalen Walker is going to be in his face, Nick. I mean, he's going to play a crucial role, always does when they play quarterbacks like this, and his ability to come off the edge again is massively impressive. Walker is a phenomenal game changer. Best linebacking group in the country by far.
Certainly a great unit here. Walker's a really good player. Had success spying, Alabama's quarterback Jalen Milroe in their earlier matchup in Tuscaloosa. He's a phenomenal player that's really good against quarterbacks that can run the ball. 57 total tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks for Walker. A great leader, a great player. C.J. Allen, 72 total tackles, second on the team by only 1 tackle, 3 tackles for loss, an interception, 4 pass breakups. While Smail Mundon and Riley Williams are 2 good players. Of course, Mundon battling some health, but still playing really good football. 48 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. While Wilson has 42 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, and 1.5 sacks. Great unit, very physical unit. You nailed it there of all your points. I like watching this team play. They could have some success. I like what this linebacker core can do.
Going to move to the Georgia secondary to cap things off. This is a group that, at times has been not great. I think throughout the year they've been pretty good. Against Texas and Georgia Tech, though, you're coming off 2 straight 300-plus yard games in games that they easily could have lost, Nick, and it's because the pass defense wasn't all that great. Throughout the year, though, they haven't been that bad. Haven't faced the toughest of opponents by any means. I thought they got burned in the middle of the field against Ole Miss. Did a great job defending against Tennessee, of course. This is a team, though, they're kind of beaten up here, mainly because Julian Humphrey decides to transfer, in the middle, right after they punch their ticket to the title game. I mean, this is a favorite for the national title, Nick, and you're a starter and you decide to transfer. You just need to retire, quite frankly. You don't care. Daniel Harris, though, he was the replacement, played a lot of snaps. He's going to be a starter. He got burned against Texas, gave up almost 100 yards. Tough spot for him to be pressed into. Very talented corner, though. Dalen Everett, he had a phenomenal game, and he's going to be the lead corner here. Are you worried about this tandem of corners, Nick? Neither team really has much depth at these positions, so these are the guys they're going to roll out with. A lot of youth for both these teams at corner. Notre Dame, they don't have the biggest of burners. They don't take too many deep shots. But again, in terms of tackling and discipline against an offense like this, it could certainly burn you from time to time. Are you worried at all?
I'm a little bit worried, but in general, I still think this is a good secondary that's got some really key pieces that can have success in this matchup. I do like what they can do. Obviously don't get burned, but, Malachi Starks is a great player in the secondary. 73 total tackles for him. KJ Bolden, Dylan Everett have been really good. 54 total tackles for each of them. 2 tackles for loss. 3 picks for Everett, 1 for Bolden. Dan Jackson is really good. 60 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 picks for him. I think this is a good unit. They've been a bit weak at times and weaker against the pass. Some confidence issues certainly in that unit, but I think they have a good unit here. Notre Dame's not going to test you a whole lot passing the ball. Got to be just good. Make sure you clean up your tackles, tackle against the run, and play good run defense in the secondary if you want to have success here.
Yeah, you allude to Malachi Starks, an elite defender. He's a phenomenal player against the run. Great tackler as well. Probably going to play more box safety potentially in this game than we're accustomed to seeing. He plays a lot of slot as well. Genoa Aguero might be put on in some of those nickel packages that allow Starks to play closer to the line of scrimmage. Not too many matchups I don't think they'll need Starks to play. Maybe against Mitchell Evans. Starks, though, he's great. It's going to be interesting to see how he plays in this game. This is a big opportunity for him to just really take over and showcase why he's the nation's best safety. And then Dan Jackson, I think he's been pretty good this year. Not all so much against the run. KJ Bolden might play in this game more than Jackson just because his range and his abilities, as a hard hitter, I think can be more coveted in a matchup like this. He's still a young player, though. Jackson's a veteran. Those are the only things really to monitor, I think, overall. Georgia secondary, they'll be in for a good game, Nick. We kind of allude to it every week when we talk about the Irish, though. Just be sound with discipline with your eyes and, of course, sound tackling. I think Georgia's probably going to check the boxes in those regards.
Yeah, certainly got to be disciplined, right? They have to play a clean game here. When you have Kirby Smart as your head coach, obviously you expect good discipline, but they've been a bit sloppy at times this year, giving up some penalties, a couple more pass interferences than you're used to as a Georgia fan. Play disciplined football, play clean football, no sloppy mistakes. Kirby being a defensive guy obviously wants his defenses to be very strong here. Secondary has to just be clean the tackles, avoid the penalties, no unnecessary roughnesses, face masks, things like that. Play clean, solid football, and I think you'll be doing just fine.
Now we move to the tail of the tape, the team comparisons. This one's going to be controversial, Nick. Georgia, they only have one edge, and that's at linebacker. I don't see where they have another edge. Secondary, I'm not going to give it to them. Defensive line, maybe we can call that one even, though at the end of the day, maybe Georgia gets the nod there. I think it's even at receiver and O-line. The Irish are deep at pass catcher. Georgia's probably a little bit better top heavy, though. But, these guys still drop a lot of passes, and the Irish are pretty efficient. And I think at running back and quarterback, those are going to be clear edges as well. A lot of these would be even at best, Nick. I don't see Georgia clearing them in many regards other than linebacker, and the Irish aren't no slouch there either. This one's going to be controversial.
Yeah, Georgia fans are not going to like seeing this. I agree with some of it, certainly quarterback and running back. I agree as well as the secondary. This is a very strong Notre Dame secondary. Defensive line, definitely closer to even for me. Offensive line, also even. I think that makes a lot of sense. Wide receiver room, I would give it to Georgia. I think they just have a more rounded unit that's just a more high potential play unit. Obviously, you're going to get with Notre Dame. They're not going to produce a whole lot, but they're just going to be consistent. Georgia fans are not going to like this. I certainly think it's a little bit bold that you went here with these advantages in Notre Dame, but I can definitely understand where you were trying to come from. This is a phenomenal Notre Dame team on paper, and I think, it's not just when you look at this matchup, you don't just say, oh, the SEC team's instantly better. That's not how this works anymore. These are very balanced teams in NIL area. You can't just say the SEC is the best talent in the country, because now everyone's able to recruit and build these talented teams. Not that Notre Dame was some slouch in the past, but Notre Dame is building a very talented roster in NIL era, and I think you're going to start to see the talent gap close between the SEC and the Big Ten, ACC, and then obviously Notre Dame, the independent school.
Now I move to the final thoughts on the prediction. Keys to the game for Georgia. You got to put Stockton into favorable situations, collapse the interior run game of the Irish, and just continue to play with juice in the trenches of your ND. Lean on Leonard's legs often, potentially 15, 20 carries in this game. It's going to be a physical affair. I picked Notre Dame to reach the national title, and obviously it's just something this program's really struggled with when they play big-time opponents. They usually don't do much. I think Marcus Freeman's a heck of a coach, and I genuinely think this team is talented, and they've not been checked once this year when it comes to playing in the trenches. No one's really had their number. It's totally possible Georgia just overwhelms this opponent, right, in terms of schematics and energy, and that's something Kirby and his team seem to do often. That's what they did against Texas really twice, but that's it. Other than that, they've not looked really impressive against anybody. They've struggled in matchups just like this. Downhill running's not been great, and maybe they can sell out a little bit more against the pass, but I think Leonard's a good enough quarterback to make some plays that keep him out of the sticks. Denbrock is an elite play caller. He's seen these defenses before, Georgia one specifically. I think this is Notre Dame's time to shine, Nick, and this could backfire tremendously, but Georgia's just not been that impressive. You pile all that on top of a backup quarterback making his first career start in this big-time game, Nick. It's not going to go perfect. Georgia, they're fighters. They don't give up. They're so tough to put down. We've seen it over the years, even this year, outlasting Georgia Tech in all those overtimes. They are incredibly tough to beat. Outcoached Sark in the second half of the SEC title game. They are difficult to put down, Nick. In the Sugar Bowl, though, it's going to come to an end. The Irish are going to win this game.
I also have Notre Dame going to the national championship game. I think this is a different Notre Dame team. I think Marcus Freeman's a different coach. Yes, he still has the fluky losses like NIU, Marshall, and some other ones, but this is a guy that's a really good coach, a guy that's building a program builder, motivator, a guy that's getting the best out of his defense and the best of his offense. Riley Leonard's an incredible player who's a veteran in the sport, who played great at Duke, took Duke to new heights at quarterback, and is taking Notre Dame to new heights as well. I think Gunnar Stockton is a great quarterback as well, who will develop and turn into a star, and I think Georgia fans should have no worries with him at the helm, but don't put him into harm's way. Do not make any mistakes. Play conservative football when you can. Obviously, still go for big plays to move down the field at opportunities, but just don't do anything stupid. Draw up a solid game plan. I trust the Georgia offensive coordinators to do that. I am going to take Notre Dame to win this game. I think they're just a better team right now, playing good football. Yes, Georgia won the SEC title game. Yes, they won a dogfight against Georgia Tech, and they certainly a resilient team, which is why I have Notre Dame only winning this game by 7 points. I think it will be a dogfight that will come down to the wire. I just trust Notre Dame's team on paper, defense, and offensively more right now. We also, unrelated thing, but their kicker has a little bit more confidence. He hit a 49-yard field goal tonight, his career long, I believe, or at least his season long, after missing a lot of kicks earlier in the season. So he's playing with confidence as well, the kicker for Notre Dame. A lot of things going the right way for the Irish. Going to be a hostile environment. Georgia fans will certainly travel well to New Orleans. I think they will be very loud and proud in the Superdome. But I like Notre Dame here. I feel confident about this team. This team's got some magic, some juice. They're playing good football. I'm going to take them to win this game.
Yep, that's going to be it for today's episode, Nick. As always, appreciate you joining me. I think this will be a very interesting contest. I can't wait to see how this plays out. It's going to be a fun chess match for 4 quarters. I think the backup quarterback adds even more intrigue to this contest. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to make just one quick comment about the result between Indiana and Notre Dame. I think Indiana still deserved to be there, even though they lost the game to Notre Dame and looked a little bit weak in the first half. They deserved to be there. They played great football. They only lost one regular season game. Big things coming for Kurt Cignetti and his company in the future. No shame in losing this matchup. Notre Dame, big things coming in my opinion as well. I'd like to see them win this matchup. I'm looking forward to this big game going down in New Orleans.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.